we accept nowadays, a little bit third pick.
We'll see. We'll see how this little thing has put the whole world upside down. It's amazing, huh?
What is the message in this little thing? We will see.
Be more sustainable.
Be more sustainable, definitely.
No, the thing is, you want it to stop, but the shorter it gets, the less of a lesson we're going to learn, because we just don't learn, if COVID disappeared yet tomorrow, we're going to be living exactly the same way, even traveling more and spending more. So I don't think we've learned the lesson, unfortunately. Well, I guess I am, I believe that a designer needs to be beyond everything an optimist. So we have to be optimistic. I personally miss a lot being with my team and the camaraderie of working together. And that for me is the biggest loss right now, that we are not able to be together, that creativity, that those sparks that come out of serendipity are not actually happening. Because, with a screen, it's not the same thing.
I do agree with you, actually. This is the lack of my life, actually. But there is another advantage. So we interact somehow. We interact each other. I mean, I was going to go to US for an exhibition last year. Yeah, I couldn't do that, but we got together, many of them from all over the world. So it's another chance. Like a makeup.
Yeah, but we miss that contact, right?
Oh, definitely.
It's not the same to do this lecture or conversation from my home than from Istanbul. Come on.
No, it's not.
The food is not the same. I miss the food in Istanbul. I had such a great time. And then everybody organizing were absolutely fantastic. So
great to
before
hear.
that one day we'll be able to be together again.
Yeah, let's hope. I mean, I do believe that we're going to pass over it somehow. Many things will be changed, but I do believe that we're going to catch this opportunity to be face to face again.
Will there be a Q&A afterwards?
No, but actually it's up to you.
Well, no, it's up to anybody. Yes. Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay, then I'll introduce you in Turkish. I'll welcome people in the beginning, then I will invite you.
Okay.
We have a minute. Tamam, saatimiz 2. Zannediyorum başlayabiliyoruz. Ben sizleri göremiyorum ama burada olduğunuzu varsayıyorum. Design Look'un ilk serisine hoş geldiniz hepiniz. Zannediyorum ki birçoğunuz Design Look'un kurumsal kimliğindeki Puşya'yı bir yerden hatırlıyordur. Doğru. 2010'ların ilk yarısında biz epeyce bir araya geldik. All Design adıyla. Ve Design Look'ta bugün All Design ekibinin yeni ürünü, yeni servisi. Ve bugün de ekip başımızın doğum günü. Harika bir kutlama olduğunu düşünüyorum. Buradan ona iyi yaşlar diliyorum. 4 günlük Design Look'un ilk gününü Diego Gronda ile açıyoruz. All Design'da da misafirimiz olmuştu. O zaman için güncel projeleri çok başkaydı. Bugün bize çok başka şeyler anlatacak. Kendisi Güney Amerika'da, Avrupa'da, Orta Doğu'da ve Uzak Doğu'da yapısal mimarinin yanı sıra kültürel ve ticari mekan tasarımlarıyla ilgileniyor. Ben de güncel işlerini çok merak ediyorum. Kendisini davet ediyorum. Hello, Diego.
Hello.
The scene is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Design Look, for this new opportunity. I'm thrilled about sharing some thoughts and ideas we've had with the team. I'm not so thrilled of the fact that I'm not able to be in Istanbul with all of you. But hopefully, as I always say, designers need to be optimistic beyond everything. Hopefully we'll see each other very, very soon. So Being that we have a limited amount of time, and I don't want to take time from anybody or my colleagues, let's start with the topic that we have been asked to develop. Understanding creating a sustainable living areas for sustainable lives means we decided to figure out how to basically attack this intriguing concept with three examples that we'll basically share in detail for very specific reasons. We're Studio Gronda. We are more than, the studio is unfortunately not here, but we are 20 designers. We have a perfect balance between interior design, architecture, and industrial design and landscaping. We're a small firm. We come from large firms and basically have try to basically create a boutique firm, with the knowledge of big firms, but in a much smaller, more bespoke kind of experience. So what the challenge we basically came up with in regards to sustainable living is, do we have sustainable living spaces, or do we live spaces in a sustainable way? I think that it's a trick in words, and it could be a little bit confusing at the beginning, but the truth is sustainability in many cases, and many of our colleagues, designers, architects, industrial designers, basically is a process where we try to do an enormous effort as big as possible to be sustainable. And in the case of an industrial designer, they create a product. In the case of an architect, we create a building. In the case of interior designer, etc., etc. But how does the concept of time comes into play with sustainability? Because it's not a question of basically finishing the project, taking good pictures on glossy magazines, and then let it go. We have a user, we have a customer that comes to those projects. How do they basically continue that line of sustainability? How do they basically learn? Because at the end of the day, by us designers creating sustainable concepts, we also need to educate people who are not in the design business, who are living our hotels, our restaurants, our offices, our residential buildings, and basically convince them or help them visualize the importance of sustainability. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. We are all sustainable, or we all try to be as sustainable as possible, but how do we go beyond this word sustainability? Then there's a lot of misinformation right now in the world. We know it. I'm not going to get into the obvious topics that everybody's been talking for the past years, but the issue about what is really sustainable. When I was working on this presentation, I was basically questioning, should I do everything with a black screen in order to save power, of all those screens? And just doing some quick research before I was basically caught off guard. I was caught off guard by my own research, realizing that most of the LED screens, when they're in black, they're spending a lot more electricity and power than when they're in white. Interesting enough, I'm not going to go into that. That's not part of my conversation. But if you're intrigued about that, take a look at it on the internet, and you'll figure out why, by just me turning from black background to white background, everybody who's attending this talk and everybody's going to be listening to it afterwards will be spending a little bit less energy. So I think that knowledge is something that it's very, very important due to the amount of misinformation, the amount of companies using the word sustainability to basically cover their sins, and how they basically feed us that completely. So my question, my suggestion, especially for young designers, is question absolutely everything when it comes to sustainability, everything that every company says, because if you dig in, nobody is really that perfect. It's very, very difficult to be purely full sustainable on our work. And those who actually achieve it, chapeau, I'm very, very impressed. But let's face it, this is not a process of finishing our work. and then saying I'm not responsible. I think that the factor of time in architecture for us at Studio Gronda is extremely important, and that needs to be taken into consideration when dealing with sustainability. From the 3 projects that I'm going to be explaining, there are 4 elements that are going to condition strongly how sustainable we are. The context and the budget. The context is, basically one of the projects we're going to be showing is in an island. So everything is a lot more expensive. How do we basically take advantage of the fact that we're an island, and in that way the context limit us, but the context that limitation help us being more sustainable. The budget, the big B, right? The budget, every client that we have, when we talk about sustainability, they immediately assume it's going to be more expensive. In many cases, they are right. In other cases, they are not. And I think that there is a conversation to be taken and an education to be taken with the clients to basically understand them, that there's not black and white. There's a truth midway, and depending on the budget, we can come closer to a more economical project or a project that's maybe more expensive, but throughout time, they will save energy, and their carbon emissions will be smaller or zero if possible. The client at the end of the day, for those of us who work with a client, is extremely important. And we have a client that's well educated on sustainability and believes that they need to do that. Half of our work is already done because we're walking this path of design hand in hand, and there's no fights, and there's no questioning about sustainability, which, interesting enough, I don't know how much of you listening agree, but sustainability, there's still a lot of people in this world, even in the creative world, that have their different opinions about sustainability. Target demographic, and this is something that relates very much to what we do. Our studio pretty much does high-end hospitality around the world. We work mostly in Asia, we've worked in the Middle East, in Europe, obviously, and in the United States. And let's face it, the younger our target demographic is for a hotel, sustainability starts to resonate in a much stronger way. High-end luxury is, unfortunately, has a certain connotation that, well, it's important, but it's not so important, or they're little like buzzwords or sound bites, to relate a particular hotel company to sustainability, when in fact it's just like a media publicity act rather than a true soul of sustainability. And that is something, obviously, when a client comes to us and basically defines the target of our hotel, that's completely, not in our control. And well, I don't want to basically make a statement that the more luxurious it is, the less sustainable. I don't think that is true. But let's face it, the younger the crowd, those visitors to our hotels are more internet savvy. They will do more research. They will basically try to get to the end on how does this particular hotel or resort behave with Earth. And I think that's important, and that's encouraging, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are going to stay a little bit longer than us in this world, and I applaud that. And last but not least, the designer, how much sustainable we are. I am the first one to admit that as much as I like to be sustainable, I'm far, far away with my studio from reaching the point that I want to reach. That for me is a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody that works in the studio. And let's face it, sometimes our hands are quite tight. Sometimes we are able to do a big difference. And obviously, our goal would be that at one point, this will not be political or conversation that creates a conflict, that we're all aligned and that we can basically approach sustainability in a much faster way. I'm going to show 3 examples, starting with the smaller scale. This is a house we developed last year, was finished. And I'm highlighting the 3 areas where sustainability was reached due to the clients, the target demographic, which is in this case the same thing, the clients who are actually inhabiting the house, and the designer, in this case, us. This is a 1960 little jewel here in Madrid. And this house, it was interesting, the architect who did this house was, named, national, I don't know what the word is, I'm sorry, but, he won the year award for architects in Spain. This was done in 1960. Spain was in a very, very bad economical situation. And this gentleman did this house for him. This is the first house with aluminum roof and aluminum windows in Spain. As you can see, it's a house that for 1960, Spain was a very traditional when it comes to residential building. And he had a very interesting approach on sustainability in the 60s, when the word basically was rarely used, of sustainability, to the point that he had his own chickens and he had his own crops. And this is in the middle of the city of Madrid, which is kind of quite unique. The house has a lot of books about it, and as you can see inside, it looked like almost like a museum with old furniture, modern furniture, etc., etc. But it was all made out of wood in 1960 in Spain. In Scandinavia it might be very common, but in Spain, in the middle of Madrid, that's very uncommon. Exposed concrete, exposed beam, as you can see on the left. A very complex structural system that needed to be basically taken care, but also at the same time, this beams are going inside of a building, which from a sustainable point of view is a terrible solution, because the heat in the beam basically goes into the house, and this house had an enormous issue of heating. It was extremely hot, it reached almost 42 degrees inside in the summer, and during the winter it was extremely cold due to the windows. Obviously there were windows of 4 millimeters, and this basically was not able to work in the 21st century. So our challenge, sorry for the picture resolution, they're all pictures, was to basically bring this house to the 21st century. But the point that I want to do in this particular house is how this house, unfortunately, which is one of the jewels of modernist architecture in Spain, was not protected. I could have basically demolished the house and built a new house, but we found a client that was eager to really respect the structure of the house. The house was in very bad shape when we were engaged, and we basically turned it into a completely, this is still the construction had basically ended, not long ago. The house was still not aligned, but you can see how this house turned into a new structure for the 21st century, with all the technology, with all the insulation. The roof had to be, the wave of this roof didn't exist anymore, so we have to do another metal roof on top of it to do the insulation. The windows were purchased from Schuko, again in Germany. These windows were bought in 1960s in Schuko. It took 1 year to do the windows for this house. At that time, we used the same company. The roof had a double insulation. Basically, even the heaters, as you can see, they were custom, they were removed, they were clean. It was a lot more expensive for the client to do all of this than to just simply demolish the house. Now, demolition is something that not a lot of people talk when it comes to sustainability. The amount of energy to demolish, to bring all this debris with a truck to another point. Europe, as you know, is very conscious about where debris and what kind of debris are thrown away. And that would have basically reached, the carbon emission would have gone skyrocket. And basically just redoing it from the inside, it was indeed more expensive, but the results of the house with its new heaters, with a new system of insulation, with windows that no longer created a problem, basically created an amazing house for this family. This house, the architect had his own studio downstairs, as you can see over here. This was very, very run down. It had a blueprint room, it had a dark room for photography, and all of these rooms needed to basically find another use. We no longer do blueprints. They didn't need a dark room for photography. They were changed into home theater areas. They were changed into bathrooms, and basically the spirit of the house, of this kind of very open space on the lower part, was kept intact with modern technology. As you can see in the lighting, these LED strips from Italy that are basically 10 on 17 meters length, to use the wood structure as a diffuser. The second example I'm going to show you is a different one. This is a restaurant, and it's a high-end restaurant, and it's a 1 Michelin star restaurant. And this is what I was basically mentioning at the beginning on the issue of luxury, and whether luxury, one tends to, or some clients tend to not ask for sustainability as much as maybe a restaurant for a younger generation. In this particular case, interesting enough, it was the client that was extremely aggressive about being sustainable. The target demographic, being a high-end restaurant, one of the most expensive restaurants in Spain, I think the jury is open. I'm assuming that there are wealthy guests that are really into sustainability, and others are more concerned about the food and decor and the service, as there are in many of these high-end restaurants. The designer, in this case, us again, obviously the goal was to be as sustainable as possible. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we had that big differentiator that we were walking hand in hand with the owner, that was basically specifically requesting a restaurant that was sustainable, to the point that we created the first LEED Gold restaurant in Spain, being a high-end restaurant. The restaurant is called Saddle. If you come to Madrid, I would recommend you to come. The food is absolutely fantastic. And as you can see from the images I'm going to show you, it's not a restaurant that basically looks as a sustainable restaurant. It doesn't have that look that we're trying to basically publish how sustainable we are. However, the system of water usage is extremely, extremely efficient. The energy efficiency is extreme, and all of the heating, which is one of the first restaurants I've ever seen in the world that do this, it's all with biomass. So there is no air conditioning system other than a forced ventilation in the event that something happens. You will see that there are no vents in this restaurant, and this is something that I personally fought hard on the concept, but also cautioned the client that having a biomass energy system for air conditioning the room was very dangerous, because when you have private dining rooms, you have a room that might, with 8 people, that maybe it's heated up, and in the next room you have 2 very skinny people having dinner, and one is cold, the other one is hot. Biomass doesn't allow you to basically control the temperature as fast as a traditional air conditioning. Yet this was created for them, and the restaurant is working quite amazingly. It won its first Michelin star this year, 1 year and 2 months after its opening. And interesting enough, all of that push to be sustainable has paid off, because this restaurant has such a sophisticated filtration system, and being high-end, the rest of the tables, we have removed some of the tables. This restaurant has no outdoor space, and it's extremely popular right now in the middle of the COVID experience, because of how much it was published, the fact that it was a LEED Gold, and the ventilation and air conditioning system that it has. So here, I would like to believe that pushing so hard for this sustainable experience, sustainable living in this particular restaurant paid off for the owner, in a restaurant that in the middle of COVID is working fine. I'm not trying here to make a statement on whether you like the restaurant or not. I'm just trying to show you the level of luxury of this restaurant, and how a space this luxurious with its own private dining rooms is at the same time extremely, extremely sustainable, to the point of reaching LEED Gold. Even a show kitchen as well, with custom Bonnet island kitchen. The furniture was all done in Madrid by local carpenters. Fabrics are local as well. So we were very, very proud of this project, on how we have been able to achieve that. But we are at the same time humble in recognizing that the client was extremely supportive on this idea of creating a high-end sustainable restaurant. Last but not least, vive las Phuket. Phuket, as many of you might know, is a big island on the west side of Thailand. V is a part of the M gallery of Accor hotels. It's basically a group of hotels. There are only 3 hotels, in fact, in the world of this chain belonging to Accor, and all 3 are in Thailand. Here, the fact that we were in an island, in this case, the context basically helped us. It was a big challenge. It was a big headache. I will admit it. But at the same time, it was something that forced us to see what precious things and what materials and what crafts we were able to find in the island to basically avoid all of this carbon emissions of bringing things with boats or with planes from all around the world. The budget helped. We had a comfortable budget. The client, as is a client that I know well and for many, many years, and is a fantastic person, but sustainability was not their first priority. You know, they were never against it, but basically he would basically favor the guest experience and the whole hospitality experience rather than the sustainability. And it was our role as designer to basically offer different options and basically share with him the advantages of one in comparison to the other, and how at the end of the day, which is something that new hotel brands are doing, on how they're basically promoting themselves online and how they're pushing the sustainability agenda quite aggressively. Being this a young brand, this is something that was appealing for him. And I would like to believe that we have achieved a lot of things in this small hotel, which is about to open in only a couple of months. I have to share my own enormous frustration by the fact that we are not able to travel from Europe to Thailand. So it will be probably the first hotel that will open at a distance, and which will not allow us to have those small little details, some of them, which I'm going to show you right now. So this is the reception. In this particular project, I think it's important for you to know that we have done the architecture and the interior design. The architecture, we've worked with my good friend Smith Obayawat in Bangkok with his company called OBA. But the architecture, the whole master plan of the idea was developed by us in all the public buildings that you're going to be seeing right now. First challenge, we are in Thailand, we're in we're in Phuket, very, very hot weather. We started with an architecture with very big roofs going beyond. This is not in any way or form our invention of ours. This is very typical in Thailand. However, rather than going with the typical traditional sloped roofs of Thailand, we went with a flat roof in an island and tried to basically use the roofs to collect water. Here, the target demographic is tricky. It is known in Thailand that most of the Europeans are towards airflow and no air conditioning. When it comes to Americans tend to basically want to have everything air conditioned. We fought very hard for the client to define on whether we can have a reception, as you can see it over here, completely open, or we will have to basically enclose the reception altogether, being that it rarely gets very, very cold in Thailand. This, I think we've achieved halfway. We had to basically create an environment that was completely open, as you can see over here. But the idea of having almost no central doors was not accepted. We are able right now to enclose completely this pavilion, which from our point of view creates a division between the arrival of the guest and the reception. But nevertheless, when we have it open, it's still quite permeable and quite friendly. This pavilion, as you can see in the center, has a large frame with art pieces that we created made out of local flowers. This is something that I have pushed all my life, and in places where flowers are not that common. In this particular case, it is. Using local flowers basically achieve two things. Number one, the idea of creating art, as you can see over here, out of flowers. Number two, scent. Just by leaving the back of this pavilion open, the wind blowing from the back will go through this art piece of flowers, and the minute the guest arrives, it has this scent. Obviously, that will work with certain flowers, not with others, but the idea is there. The water. Water is obviously something that we use a lot to cool down spaces naturally. In this particular case, also the noise of water. It's key for us to basically blur the noise of the tires on the cobblestones, which is also very annoying. We don't want to have a squeaky noise of the asphalt, and we want to have a very harmonious experience with nature and the environment. This is in the middle of a jungle, and basically it's one of the few virgin peninsulas in the south of Phuket. We're very lucky to have this project, and there are only 32 villas. There are no rooms in this hotel. They're only independent villas with their own garden and their own pool overlooking the sea. Materials, we use natural materials, stone floor, the natural wood grain that we will find in local trees, some texture wall coverings that we brought from abroad. This artist that does this kind of liquid art, we found it locally. The ambience that we were trying to achieve, very contemporary, very modern, not very Thai, but developed by Thai craft. The idea of the roofs overhanging to basically control the sun. It's pretty hot. Some of the furniture we designed, some of the ideas that you can see over here for the use of water, the use of flowers to be part of the art and the experience. Part of the lobby the entrance to the restaurant itself, that basically all these enormous metal grills were inspired on local flowers, and how these grills basically anchor both sides, and how the roof is very, very important, how we basically created different layers of the roof above this reflecting ceiling that you see over here, to basically create the best insulation, for this space. This big hanging, these are inspiration images. What you see on the right hand side is the Amman in Dominican Republic. This idea of higher ventilation, so that the wind goes and removes all the hot air, and the big cantilevered awnings to basically bring the sun and control it. A lot of plants surrounding the building to bring down the temperature, to do a natural insulation. The idea of a water feature, which was originally fought back by the client a lot under the concern that it does get very windy. So we basically added a titanium mesh to the water feature, so that only very small particles of water will go through the mesh and basically bring the temperature of these kind of pool cabanas that you can see behind the water feature, like almost like private little cocoons for guests. They will be cooled down naturally by the pool, obviously the water of the pool, but also by this water feature that creates the perfect murmur sound that we want to achieve. The freshness, because sustainability is also related to what you see. If you're sitting in this restaurant, you're surrounded by concrete or surrounded by plants, obviously the experience is completely different, the temperature is completely different, the scent is completely different. And I think at the end of the day, the well-being of guests is enhanced by these natural materials. The ceiling is all wrapped in wood, which also help us for the insulation. Moving into different areas, if we go to the top of this restaurant, you'll see that there's a rooftop bar. We've surrounded the rooftop again by water. The rooftop has different levels, different platforms. Some platforms are actually in the water. In order to basically create a very relaxing area, we step them up in a way that they work like almost like an amphitheater. The lounge areas on the top are the highest ones, the bar is in the middle, and then as we reach the sea, which is on the bottom of our image, these seating arrangements are starting to go down. This basically allows us to achieve this kind of view. This is I'll show you the construction images right now, but this is what we're trying to achieve. And as you can see, the water and the plants are all over to really create a very fresh, very sexy environment. When we came to define the architecture of the spa, we went a little bit beyond. Obviously, we use green roofs. This is a no-brainer. It's the best way not only to minimize the visual impact of these buildings within the whole complex, but also the installation of the different pavilions. The 4 pavilions that you see on both sides, on the left, on the right. The ones on the left are suites for treatment rooms. The one on the right and the top as well. The one on the bottom is a gym. But the one I want to focus the most, which is our favorite, is the one in the center. Guests arrive from the reception, as you can see on the top of the image, and they arrive to a reception that's basically located on the center pavilion in the middle. Those guests then go through an immersive experience going through this water feature on the slab to reach the yoga pavilion. The yoga pavilion has all of its roof made out of glass. And this is something interesting. The water basically allows us to bring down the temperature. But also in yoga, for those of us who have practiced yoga once in our lifetime, yoga is also about concentration in the way that you have the different poses. So we basically figure out how the water will go through the water, the light will go through the water, will create these ripples on the floor, which will all basically help you bring your mind to a more of a standstill or serene point of view. It'll also help you to focus on a particular ripple and your concentration. And then we just dropped some of the water on the side once again, hopefully to have this pavilion most of the time open in the middle of the forest and have some breeze going through this vertical drop of water to basically add, to lower the temperature of the space. Some of the materials that we use, local woods, local wall coverings, but we did bring some travertine from inland. And the reason why I'm bringing that, because somebody can accuse me that that's not very sustainable, is because we wanted to have some natural materials that are related to luxury, with a lot of natural materials from the island to create that kind of collage of things. These stone travertine is not used throughout, it's just in very specific areas. But we thought it was important to basically try to achieve that European look that the client was looking for. He was very clear that the demographic was going to come from Europe, and that he didn't want the typical modern Thai interpretation for locals. They wanted to have something that was more related to Europe. So these are images of inspiration, the idea of these glass boxes levitating within the nature, the idea of framing the view, and the idea of surrounding by water, as you can see on the right. The idea, as I mentioned before, of combining travertine on one side, but all of a sudden these craft-made curtains made out of little sticks weaved together that we can basically source locally. The idea of the candles was interesting because we basically requested local manufacturers to do candles with scents from flowers from the island. So the idea of the candles that you'll see throughout is that when you're entering the suites treatment room, you can basically, by smelling the candles when they're off, you can select your scent, but in an extremely low-tech way, and in a way also rooted in the nature of the island. Some of the images of the interiors of the treatment rooms, I'm not trying to here to make a statement of our design, but just I think everybody would agree that's a luxurious design, and at the same time is sustainable. The idea of the candles, as I mentioned before, the idea of the water that I mentioned before, and the image on the left-hand side, the idea that the water is going through the roof, and basically it's assisting the concentration when a yoga class is taking place. You see the yoga pavilion with the windows, with the roof all made out of water. We went through everything. We went into branding. We this was beyond our services, but we basically like to do this kind of holistic experience in all of our projects. The metal structures that I mentioned, the trellises that we had in the restaurant being manufactured in Phuket, the carpets also as well created in Thailand, the chairs, the bars, everything has been done locally, with very few exceptions, such as the travertine that I mentioned, or the wood glass, which is not made in Phuket, and some wall coverings that we brought from Europe. So like a sneak preview, here you see the pavilion before they actually clad the roof with wood. The windows still need the lattice that's missing, but you'll see that we'll have these enormous pivoting doors that will allow us to have this air circulation throughout. The pool of the restaurant that we showed very, very briefly, and the view of the bay, which is breathtaking. A lot of the concepts that we did for the restaurant are based on Akoya. Akoya is one of the pearls that are cultivated in this particular bay. It's a very small little pearl. So we always try to use the best out of context and thorough research on the area to get the best out of it and to apply it into this particular hotel. This is also a great, and this is getting into a completely different topic, which is the experience. For us, part of the experience of a guest is getting knowledge out of a hotel. So you also empower the staff by telling all these stories that this wood is all from local forests, that the pearls are brought from the bay. You give them information to all the staff to share with the guests and teach and learn and also be proud of it. It's not something that has been brought up from 700 different countries around the world, but it was all mostly sourced locally. The spa, particularly from my point of view, obviously they had to remove a lot of the trees to build it, then the trees will grow. In Thailand, everything grows very, very fast. It looks a lot more massive than I would have loved to, I have to admit it. But there were a lot of connotations on how high this is basically floating in the air, and we'll have trees basically growing all around it to basically control the sun. So basically, just to finish, because we're almost at 40 minutes of the time that I was given, I think that living sustainably, but most importantly, expect those around you to follow as well. When I wrote this phrase, I said, live sustainably and demand those around you to follow. I think demand is a strong word, and a lot of the problems we're dealing in this world are due to that people are demanding because this is the right thing to demand. And I think that basically mostly closes down people from engaging sustainability. I think that we designers who understand the importance of sustainability, we the designers who have generations coming behind us and we care about them, we need to be educators of clients, of demographics coming to hotels, restaurants, wellness facilities, etc., to try to convince them, not demanding, not in an aggressive way, but creating tools on our side on how sustainable is not more expensive per se. There are certain things that need to be taken in consideration, and maybe other things we're not going to be able to do. But if we find the right words and the right setting to basically explain with humility these ideas, I think that we can achieve a much better world and a more sustainable, so that this planet basically lasts a lot more than we are expecting right now. Thank you so much. I hope this was of interest to you, and I'm looking forward if anybody has a quick question. We might have a couple of minutes. If not, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Diego. Thank you very, very much. It was great to listen to you again.
Thank you.
We had a little bit technical issue. We got over 60 accreditation, but technically they wanted to online at the same time. So some of them couldn't be with us, but this recording will be published, will be shared later on.
Okay.
And, we have some questions if you have time.
Sure.
Okay. First question from my people, industrial designers.
From who, sorry?
My people
Okay.
are the industrial designers.
Okay, a difficult question then.
No, not really. Do you have a team member as industrial designer in your studio?
No, we're all, as I always say, we're all frustrated in industrial designers because we design furniture, we design things, but in phase 2 of our studio, which we're starting right now, we are looking to have a full-time industrial designer in the project. It's extremely important, you know. Sometimes I basically go into 2 different ways of thinking. Sometimes you don't want to have somebody in-house because you want to work with the best. So you want to have somebody who's evolving and not inside of your company, but more with a lot more freedom on other projects. Mm-hmm. But we do that with lighting. For example, we outsource lighting all the time. But in the case of industrial design, I think that a lot of ideas that we don't even, we offer to the client as a way of completing the experience. A lot of ideas are left in a paper because we don't have the right manpower to actually achieve that. So yes, we are looking forward, and it is extremely important for us when we basically are talking about landscaping in hotels that we're doing like 3 very large hotels right now. We're doing landscaping, we're doing architecture, we're doing interior design. We do a little bit of graphic design, but industrial design that basically has a broader range of scales in comparison to graphic design is something that's missing us. So we basically sneak into your world without making too loud. We design pieces, but I think that having an expert will help us a lot, and also build pieces in a more sustainable way, which is really definitely not our experience when it comes to industrial design.
I accept that as an offer to industrial designers, and I will share that on my social media.
Okay, don't get me into trouble, but thank you. You know, that will be fantastic.
Yeah, I guess it's not important to be on the same team, same company, same office, but as a shareholder, you're open to cooperate with industrial designers. That's what we are looking forward to hear, because we do believe in interdisciplinary design processes.
And every time I've seen Turkish design in Milan, in the fair, there's a young effervescence of Turkish designers that's very appealing to me. I think that I don't like to categorize countries, but I think that many of your young designers are taking many more risks when designing, and that's refreshing. That's very, very refreshing. I think the world needs, you know, people taking a little more risks. Some furniture you go like, it's not so comfortable, but it's so cool, I'm gonna buy it. Or, you know, it's very interesting how they basically took this design in a completely new way of thinking and came with a completely different object. I think that's very necessary in a world that we are feeling more and more comfortable with the usual brands. I've always been pleasantly surprised by Turkish industrial designers.
Thank you very much for this answer. And do you accept intern?
We have a problem with COVID. We right now we have 6 more staff members than desks. So we have no space in the office. That's why I'm saying phase 2. But phase 2 will take its time. You know, we're looking for a new space, but that's not something that's easy. We're happy to be with all the projects we have, that we have not had to lay off anybody, no salary reduction. That for me has been the goal throughout this very difficult year we all went through as designers. And right now we are not obviously thinking of aiming into growth, into aggressive growth. but we have currently our scope of our quota of interns. Yes, we have 4 young designers working for us.
Mhm. Thank you very much. So I will continue in Turkish a little bit. Acaba katılımcılarımızdan, izleyicilerimizden sorusu olan var mı? I have seen some thank you messages to you. I also thank you.
Okay.
I'm asking if there is any question. Endüstriyel tasarımcılarla çalışıyor mu? Ekibinde var mı diye sordum. Ekibinde full time çalışan bir endüstriyel tasarımcı yok ama ihtiyacı olduğunu söyledi. Stajyer alıyor mu diye sordum. Yüz yüze olmadığımız için şu anda almıyoruz şeklinde yanıtladı. Başka sorusu olan var mı acaba? Actually, you start to your presentation with a message to students. Can I ask, can you re-summary about it? I guess it's important to us.
Refresh my memory, which particular message?
Actually, you gave some advices to design students.
Yes, what I mentioned is that sustainability has many labels in a way. You have the big firms that have a very cookie cutter approach to it, and with the strong names, very strong messaging. I always say there are companies that are doing fantastic things. There are companies who basically say they're doing fantastic things, and in fact, they're just putting another coat to their company, but they're exactly the same company. I think that there's a lot of information going on that basically affects all the disciplines in this world. You have to read more, you have to question more. I always basically say, question absolutely everything you read. You know, even the very simple example I gave about what screen uses more energy, is it the black or the white? That for me was common sense, saying white spends more energy. And that's not the case. It's exactly the opposite. So I think that sustainability should not be a niche when it comes to a client coming to us, whether you're an industrial designer, an interior designer, or an architect, that one can basically say, oh, okay, yeah, this kind of project or this kind of a challenge, we're not going to get into sustainability because it's not possible. I encourage everybody, specifically very energetic young designers, to question that to its full. And if you're really sustainable, for us, in many ways, when we need to fight for an idea with a client, is we, at our own cost, at our own time, we develop an alternative idea. If the client has requested A, B, and C, I think it's arrogant not to give them A, B, and C. But once we show them A, B, and C, we show them D, E, and F. And what's this? It's okay, this is, you know, we heard you, and we believe that we can do this in this other way, in a more sustainable way, or in a more attractive way, or in a more, but if you're into really trying to look for a message of sustainability, and not just a message, but a true act of sustainability, sometimes you need to fight, and that fight, unfortunately, sometimes falls in the hands of the designers. And I say unfortunately, because sometimes you have no time, and trying to fight for that idea implies maybe not sleeping that night, working harder, working more hours, and the second thing for any young designers, never get discouraged, because you will get more no's than yes from a client. We all went through that, and I still do. You know, don't think that this is going to end and one day you're going to be a superstar and everybody will say yes. Superstars receive a lot of no's. The thing is, you never realize that, but there are a lot of great designers that with great ideas that have been rejected, and I think that's, as long as you believe that you're a creative person, that you'll never run out of ideas, which is my case. I I don't care sharing ideas, because I strongly believe, maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm in trouble, but I believe I will always keep on having new ideas, and that's what keeps me in check in a way to basically generate more and more ideas. I think that when an architect, a designer, an interior designer, industrial designer starts getting comfortable in his or her shoes, is when trouble appears. You start becoming decadent, you start becoming lazy, you start not challenging. I am of the idea that a designer is a curious person, it's a challenging person, and it's an optimistic person. That's the message also, obviously, for the times we're living.
Thank you. And we have a question from an audience. Huawei P Smart, isminizi göremiyorum. Siz mikrofonunuzu açıp sorar mısınız sorunuzu? Sizi duyamıyoruz. Katılımcı ismi olarak Huawei P Smart görünüyor. Mikrofonunuzu açıp sorabilir misiniz ya da yazabilir misiniz sorunuzu? Yazılı olarak geldi. Ben sizin sorunuzu okuyayım o halde. We have a long question. Açabildiniz mi mikrofonunuzu? Tamamdır, okuyorum ben.
Okay, but I think I can read the question.
Oh yeah, yes you can. Yes, you can. Please.
It says, how can a designer create a balance when it comes to natural materials? Is it great to use? It is great to use local materials. However, when it comes to natural materials, it gets tricky to put a line in line when it comes to sustainability. Energy saving is a key element in sustainable design. So how can we introduce similar approach into the use of natural materials? That's the tango we dance every single day. There are certain architects and designers that basically take this to an extreme, and I applaud them. If you have a client that basically allows you to do so. I would like to believe that we are lucky to have a lot of clients, some of which are more into sustainability, more open to ideas than others. Let's face it, when you go to a hotel, that you always arrive to any hotel, no matter what, there is a little piece of paper in the bathroom saying, if you don't put the towel on the bathtub, we will consider that you will reuse that towel. The million-dollar question always is, are the hotels doing that because they save money in laundry, or are they doing that for saving the environment? And I'm sure that at the beginning it was more money. With time has balance, and right now you'll never get the right answer from them, but some of them will be truly dedicated to be sustainable, and others are not. It's very difficult. It's honestly very difficult. I basically, when I show some of the materials we use for the project in Phuket, I purposely show the travertine, which anybody who does a little bit of research will realize that there is no such a thing, travertine stone in Phuket, to say, okay, we're not so extreme of saying we're going to only use, I don't know, some ugly black stone that they have in Phuket because it's local. Because honestly, for the kind of experience we were trying to achieve and the target we were trying to reach, a black stone was not appropriate, was too urban, was too not very resort wise. So you have to basically balance. How can you be sustainable without compromising the guest experience? Because let's face it, one can get very harsh on the sustainability, and you do a hotel only with local materials, and that hotel is not appealing to a particular guest. The hotel goes bankrupt, it's demolished. Your carbon emission had skyrocketed because you tried to do the right thing. So for me, it's important that the way we tackle this Virgin Peninsula with trees and everything was done in a sustainable way, that the trees that had to be relocated will be relocated again to its original place once the construction is finished, that hotel, with the premises of sustainability that we created, there will be absolutely no fuel consumption. Everything is electric. Everything is with electric bogies. The cars from guests arrive to that reception pavilion, and that's it. They're removed from the plot altogether, so that there is absolutely no carbon monoxide in the premise. For me, that's an effort that needs to be celebrated, and I hope it's successful. So by bringing the travertine and paying the ship to bring the travertine from the inland, from mainland, am I basically creating a big sin? No, it's definitely, has carbon emissions for sure. But I do believe, I'm just using the example because I don't think travertine is the basis to my design. But I do believe that you have to put in the balance at the end of the day, whether you want to do the best winning award hotel of sustainability and the poor client who paid for it goes bankrupt because the hotel is really not the level of comfort that you have been requested, because at the end of the day, we have been requested for a 5-star, high-end, European-driven hotel that's basically brought Germans and English and Italians at certain times of the year, and then Russians at a different time of the year. We design in a very strategic way. So we need to understand what does high-end luxury in Thailand for a Russian, for a British, for a German means, and not just say, no, this is completely sustainable and you need to like it because it comes from Thailand. Unfortunately, I am not in a position to say that that I'm willing to do that and compromise the investment and huge investments of our clients. So it is a balance. I do believe that in this particular project of Phuket, I'm extremely happy on the balance we achieve, because most of it, I would not know if it's 70 or 80%, has been brought locally or manufactured locally. And the items that were brought from abroad, like a wall covering, its carbon emission is very, very, very small. It's very compact. I'm not bringing stone from Nepal, or stone from Italy, which will be extremely expensive and contaminated. Not sure if that answers your question. I totally agree with you. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I guess there is one question. Zannediyorum bir soru daha vardı. Lal Yetki, isminizi görmüştüm az önce. So it's kind of not a question, but let me say, you can also read. If people can see sustainable, can also look and feel good. We can inspire them to act sustainable as well. Thank you for talking about this as well. So it's a thank.
Thank you.
Sustainable is not luxury. That's the bottom line. I take it also. Zannediyorum başka sorumuz yok. I think all questions are there. Thank you very much, Diego.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure. Hopefully next time it will be in Istanbul. Thank you for everybody for listening to this 3 examples I tried to share. Don't get discouraged. Fight hard for sustainability. It's only getting better. That I can tell you for sure. It's only getting better. We are getting more and more clients that are more into it. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, additional work, to convince, to improve, to show them new solutions that they have not thought about it. And sometimes it's more difficult. It's more work for us, but I think it's worth it. It's worth that extra additional work, that hour that you sleep less every night to develop a new idea, because at the end of the day, it will pay up and the world will thank you. So thank you so much for everybody for paying attention, and I'm hoping to see you in person very, very soon.
Thank you again. Thank you very much. Herkese çok teşekkürler. Sonraki panelimiz 16'da Adnan Serbest'in sürdürülebilirle ilgili manifestosunun yer aldığı panelimiz. Hepinizi oraya da bekliyoruz. Maalesef Hakan Gürsu sağlık sebebiyle 16'daki paneline katılamıyor. Nerede görüşmek üzere. Thank you, Diego. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye.